While picking mushrooms, he found a monument in the forest. Then he saw his childhood photo. The freedom of choice considered to be one of the most important pillars of the American Constitution. That means that everyone has the right to choose his friends, his job, his partner. Not only that, in 1964, the United States Congress approved the Bill of the Freedom of Choice Act, which declares that it is the policy of the United States that every woman has the fundamental right to choose to bear a child, terminate a pregnancy prior to fetal viability, or terminate a pregnancy after viability when necessary to protect her life or her health. That means that even parents have the right to choose if they will have this child or not. But after all, you can't choose your parents. That was what Rob used to say. You can even choose if you want to live or die in some states right now, but you can't choose your parents. Rob was always looking into a photo of him and his mother, smiling at him, asking him if he had the right to choose his parents. Would you ever choose this old lazy man? And saying to himself that he would never choose him, but didn't remember his mother. She died when he was a little boy. But what if she would live? Would he choose her also? He will never know the answer of that question because never met her. He only can assume if she was a good woman or not. In the photo, she looked so beautiful and cheerful. How a woman like that could be with a man like his father? Maybe she was just like him. After all, you can't know too much about someone from an old photo. Rob's father, Gary, was a former military. He'd done 2 tours. He'd been in Afghanistan and in Iraq. That was the only time he left his small city. Gary didn't have a job, and he never looked for a job. He lived on the military pension. He used to say, "I don't need to get a job to be a good American citizen. I already served that country enough." He spent all his money on drugs and alcohol. Rob and his father were living in a small farmhouse that had been left to Gary from his father. The house was dirty and almost without any furniture because Gary sold everything that he could to buy drugs. Rob and his father, Gary, were always fighting because Gary didn't provide anything to the house. No food, no clothes, and water. Rob had to take care of himself, and in that young age, he can't get a job. He's still 17 years old, and it's illegal for anyone to employ him. So he had to figure something out. He started to steal car tires so he could save enough money to provide food and clothes. He didn't get a lot of money from stealing it, but it was enough for him. But the problem was that his father was taking his money. After all, the military pension wasn't enough to get all the drugs and alcohol. Rob decided to stop fighting with him and give him what he wanted. He said to himself, "I just need to wait 1 more year and I'll be 18 years old. Then I will never need him or have to stay in this miserable house again." The house wasn't so far from the forest, so Rob used to go there to hunt animals with his father's shotgun or pick mushrooms. One day while he was picking mushrooms, he found some weird stone covered by grass. He removed the grass to find a monument. He was so surprised who would leave a monument in such a place like that. He went closer from the monument to look at the photo on the monument, and he was shocked. He realized that it was his photo. After a few seconds of shock, Rob started to read what was written under the childhood photo on that monument. "This is our son, the last we saw of him in this place. We don't know if he lived or died, but lost him forever. Sarah and John Smith." He knew that his mother's name was Sarah, but he never knew her last name and who's Smith. According to what's written in the monument, he should be his father. But if John Smith is his father, who is Gary then? At that time, Rob had a lot of questions that he didn't know their answers to. At first, he decided to go back home and ask Gary about this monument. But after a few seconds, he said to himself, "If I'm someone else's son and Gary has been lying to me about all these past years, what will make him tell me the truth now? I need to find out what happened by myself." Rob didn't return home. Instead, he went to his friend's house, Alex, who was his only friend. Rob asked Alex if he could use his computer, and Alex agreed. Rob wasn't so familiar with computers because he never had one before, so he asked Alex to help him. Rob told him, "I want to look for a missing kid case. It's an old case." "Alex, if you know the exact date, that would help us more." Rob remembered the date that he saw on the monument and told Alex. Alex seemed amazed and said to Rob, "That was almost 15 years ago. Why are you interested in this case?" Rob said, "I'll tell you later. It was in the forest near my house. Please search." "Okay, I'll do," says Alex. After a few moments of silence, Alex said to Rob, while he's still looking at the screen of the computer, "There was a case looked similar to what you're looking for. The kid called David Smith. He was with his parents, Sarah and John, in camping in the forest. The parents went to sleep, and in the morning they couldn't find their son. They reported the incident to the local police, and they started the searching process for weeks and weeks, but they never found him. After a few months, the parents lost hope and returned to their home in Texas. This part is interesting. It says here that after a few years, the parents went back to the forest and built a monument in the same place they lost their son on. When Alex finished reading, he looked to his friend to find him so shocked. Alex asked him, Why are you looking at that? Do you know this kid? Rob said, I'll tell everything later, I promise. Please continue. Alex said, what else do you want to know? I want to know everything about the parents, Sarah and John Smith, said Rob. Alex said, well, there isn't information about them. It says here that John Smith is a famous lawyer in Texas and nothing about his wife, Sarah. Rob said, can you search for Sarah? Alex says, okay, I got her Facebook account. Sarah Smith married to John Smith. She's a beautiful lady. How could you know that she's beautiful? Rob said. Alex said, because I'm looking at her photo. Come here, you can see. Rob left his seat and approached to Alex's computer to look at the photo. She's older, her face changed, and she's beautiful, as Alex said. But there's no doubt that this woman is his mother, Sarah. When Rob realized that, he started crying. Alex looked at him and said, well, that's getting really weird now. You need to tell me what's happening. Rob got back to his seat and started telling Alex the story. Alex was listening to his friend with his mouth open, and he said, do you mean that Gary isn't your father? Rob said, most likely yes, but I don't know anything for sure. Alex said, but why would he lie about that? I don't know yet, Rob said, but I need plain. Alex said, I may have idea. My father always, if can get a man drunk, you can get anything from him. I don't think that it would be a hard thing for you to do. Rob, well, let's get him drunk then. Rob thanked Alex and made him promise that he will never tell what he told him to anyone, at least until he found out the truth. On his way home, Rob got 2 bottles of whiskey in order to get Gary drunk. At first, Gary was surprised from the generosity of his son. He never had done that before, but didn't care. He just wanted to drink. A few hours later, Rob realized that this was the perfect time to ask Gary. He looked at him and said, Gary, are you my real father? There was a silence for seconds before Gary said, no, of course not. How a guy like me become a father for a loser like you? Who's my father then? Rob said. Gary said, some idiot lawyer your mother left me for. Rob was shocked. He didn't say anything, but Gary was so drunk he continued telling the story. Your mother was the love of my life, but one day we had a big fight because she found out that I was back to drinking again. Then she simply left and she didn't come back again. A few months later after she left, I knew from one of her friends that she was pregnant. So I called her after and I got her number from the same girl and asked her about what I'd been told. She told me that she used her constitutional right in an abortion. So I told myself if she takes my baby away, I will do the same to her so she can feel what I felt. When Rob heard the story, he ran from the house crying. He went to Alex's house and told him what happened. Alex was shocked and asked him, what will you do? Rob said, I've been saving money behind Gary's back. I'll use the money to travel to Texas and meet my real parents. I just need you to help me book a ticket. After Alex booked to him the ticket and gave him the address, Rob went to Texas to meet his real parents for the first time. When Sarah and John opened to him the door and listened to his story, they didn't believe him at first, but then he showed them the photo. They thought he might be telling the truth. They ran a DNA test and knew for sure that Rob is David, their son. Sarah and John reported the story to the police, so Gary got arrested and Rob, who changed his name to his birth name now, David, stayed in Texas. Finally, David is living a happy life with his real family right now.